Well, folks, you know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune because it's time for another week of the Rec Poker Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Reid, Bluffsterini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on the hellscape we call Twitter. And I have the best freaking job in the world talking poker with my friends here on the Strategy Forums edition of the podcast every Monday night while we steal each other's chips in the free nightly home game. Now, we are brought to you by Running Aces. They are the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. They're located less than an hour north of the Twin Cities in the beautiful state of Minnesota. You can find out more about them at runaces.com. And most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we really depend on support from our sponsors and from our premium members who take part in our training materials and study opportunities for only $22 a month. Now, you can sign up for free because everything starts with a free account at RecPoker, where all you need to join is an email address and a smile, but we do insist on both. But you can always get your first month of premium membership for only $5 by using the code RecPoker at checkout. And if you don't have $5, I get it. It's a tough time out there in the world. That's why we like to support local food banks here at RecPoker. And you can make a donation of any amount to your local food bank and just send us the receipt, proof of your donation, and we'll happily credit you a free month at RecPoker as a way of saying thanks for helping out your neighbor. So I hope you do. Now, I host the show on Mondays, so you get used to hearing my voice, but I'm only one man. It takes a group, a gang, a crew to make all the magic happen around here. We call this group of wizards the RECing Crew, and of course you do, because we're all dorks over here. If you want to learn more about me or the rest of the RECing Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew or listen up, because you're going to meet a few of them right here tonight on the show, starting with producing co-host Chris Jones.
I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Twitter or Blue Sky or 5x5 in the Poker Stars home game. And I help run our monthly strategy segment called The Deep Dive.
But of course, he's not alone. There are lots of other members on the RECing Crew, some of them even falling after C alphabetically by first name.
I'm Kim Kilroy. I'm PetBet33 on the social platforms, Fergie56 in the home game, and I run a hand history study. We do one a month on the second Wednesday of the month.
My name's Rob Gardner. I help with the marketing over here at Rec Poker and get to hang out with all these lovely people. And you can find me on Twitter at Rob Gardner Live.
And I'm Rob Washup Squirrel. At Rabman50, most places. And you can find me on the first and third Wednesdays of every month while I get together with a bunch of premium members and go over books in the Rob's study.
I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on Twitter at Taylor_Moss or as Gopher Boy TJM in the Rec Poker home game, which I stream live on Twitch on Wednesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central.
So that's just a few of the RECing Crew members and all the trouble that they get up to over here at Rec Poker. I hope you give us a try for free. And like I say, get involved with our premium membership. It's a fun bunch. Now, here on the forums edition of the podcast, every week we take a look at a post from the free-to-use Rec Poker forums. We've recently really upped our Discord game as well, and we have a lot of very active and engaged members on our Discord. If you go to rec.poker/forums, you can find the forums. If you go to rec.poker/discord, you can get an invitation to join our Discord. Both are free. Both are fantastic places to come and ask questions of our poker learning community. They're also great places to come and just show off all your fantastic wins and brilliant poker making decisions and get some kudos. So whether it's to show off good hands, bad hands, stuff to learn from, come post them here for free and get some feedback from some other serious, thoughtful, fun recreational players like us. We're looking at a hand today from our Discord channel. This is from Fripper, who also goes by Midwest 1811. Fripper is a relatively new premium member here, and they start their post by saying that they're trying to get better at taking notes and self-analyzing. And so this is one of their first attempts, and they just want to kind of share it with the group and get some feedback on how they're processing information, how they're recording the hand, and some thoughts on a few strategic points throughout the hand. So Chris Jones, I'm going to hand this over to you. You pulled this hand from our Discord. why don't you take us through the action and we'll give Fripper a little analysis.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say to Fripper that for a first attempt at a hand report or a hand, this is a good one because most people leave out a lot of really important details, and this one has it all. I think it might be missing a few things, but it's really comprehensive and well done. So thanks for taking such good notes and sort of putting that kind of effort into it. But anyway, we are in a 20K guaranteed tournament, $360 buy-in senior event. And I think we're probably pretty well along in the day because we're at the 1K, 2K, 2K level. And our hero is in the low jack with a 65 big blind stack. And they have ace of spades, four of spades, which they open for a min open to 4K. And the effective stack in this hand, which is the hijack, off of a 62 big blind stack. So we had 65, they've got 62. Calls, as does the big blind. The big blind is the smaller stack, but is not going to factor much into this hand. Anything we want to talk about pre-flop before we kind of get into the post-flop action? I think it's
Only,
yeah.
when I first saw the hand, I thought, oh, two big blinds is a small sizing. If everyone's got over 60 bigs, maybe I'd be opening to 2.25 or 2.5 or something like that. But if it just happens that these two players are the bigger stacks and the other players at the table, like the big blind, have a smaller stack, then I think there's an argument for sizing down. And I think the players you really got to key on are the button and the big blind. They're the ones that are most likely to come along with you. So if the button or the big blind have shorter stacks, but everyone else is pretty deep, I'll still kind of treat those as though they're the effective stacks and size down my open. But that's the only note I have at this point.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, so we go to a flop here. We're three ways. We are kind of in the middle of that sandwich situation that we often find ourselves in when we open in earlier position. And the flop is, remember, we have ace of spades, four of spades. The flop is queen of spades, six of spades, five of diamonds. Pretty nice flop for us. The big blind checks, and our hero elects to bet 6K, so three big blinds into a pot, which is about, let's see, 4, 8, 16 plus 18. So it's about 19K. So about 6K into 19. So it's about a third pot bet. And the hero asks, before we get into the rest of the action, thoughts on my flop bet, sizing bet versus checking.
I have something to say.
All right,
Yeah, jump in, Kim.
Let's hear you, Kim.
I think the pot's closer to 15K, but so I think their
12.
bet is still less
yeah,
than
right.
half.
You're right.
That is still less than half. I think that in these scenarios, we often, for most of our range, will check as we're out of position. So that when we do bet, I think we use a bigger size. I don't mind the bet with the holding that we have, which is I think a backdoor straight draw and the nut flush draw and an over. I would like to see it bigger though, more like in the range of 70% of the pot or 75% of the pot.
Mhm.
So if since we don't bet very often, when we do bet, we should probably be using a bigger sizing. So that's what I would have to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel the opposite. I was thinking a small sizing here, even betting 4 or 5K is originally what I was thinking. My gut reaction is 70% pot size here is just way too big. Given that we're multi-way, I don't think we need to bet that big all that often. And there's a lot of other drawing hands that we are in really good shape against that we don't necessarily want to price out in this spot. We don't want to get rid of lower flush draws. We don't want to get rid of the straight draws. We kind of want to get some value from them. So I'm not opposed to checking or betting small here. And then if I'm checking, I'm probably going for like a check raise line with this specific holding. So I can see this going a lot of different potential ways. I think it's the conundrum of always being out of position here because we are out of position against the other big stack. We're going to find out that the big blind folds and then we're out of position versus the other player. But yeah, I think 70% is just too big here with our draw.
And
Uh,
I mean, oh, go ahead, Rob.
I
No, go
was
ahead.
just going to say, I think there's a bigger question with both lines, and that is, what are we doing when we get raised here? Because the answer to that question is going to dictate a lot about checking, betting small, and betting big, depending on what our answer and response is to that. So I'd be curious to hear from Taylor and Kim, like, what are you doing in a situation where you bet small or bet big and then get raised?
I am getting it in here
Yep.
when I bet big here and get raised.
What about you, Tay?
If I bet small here and get raised, probably a bit villain dependent, but probably calling and reevaluating on later streets. Like I'm never folding with this hand, and then I think part of the small bet allows me to, not get stacks in immediately. Because I think one key part that we didn't spend a whole lot of time talking about, Chris roughly mentioned that we're probably late in the tournament. We got a bit of clarity that this is the 27 left redraw. We're probably a little bit past that, and the pay bubble's at 15. So like we're getting somewhat close to the money here. And that's going to make me want to play a little bit nittier in some of these spots.
Mhm.
I did preface by saying I preferred the check to the bet.
Right. So let me ask you this. If it sounds like, check seems like a really reasonable option, maybe one we want to strongly consider. If we are going to bet a hand like this, and whether we take the larger or the small sizing, it might change our answer to this question, but what are, when you think about what kind of value we can have as the original opener in this hand, we can have the couple of overpairs, right? We can have aces and kings. We can have ace queen. We can have queens. I guess we can have jacks and tens, which aren't. We can have king queen. I don't know. Maybe we can have some pocket fives, pocket sixes. That's really where our value, sort of the value part of our range extends. What are you doing with just that portion? Let's forget the flush draws and some of that kind of stuff. Between check and bet small or bet big, what are you doing with that portion of your range?
I'm betting small a lot of the different value hands that I have, but probably not the like extreme value of like pocket queens. But set of sixes, set of fives, ace queen, king queen, kings, aces, I'm gonna bet all those on the small side.
Is that out
I'm
of
still checking a lot. Yeah.
is that out of a fear of not being balanced?
I am betting a lot of those for value and to charge other draws because there are a lot of other draws that would exist out there, a lot of other pairs. Like I'm purely trying to inflate the pot when I view myself as having a superior hand.
Because I think for me, the dividing line comes down to the skill of my opponent. If I don't feel like I'm going to get exploited by having different sizes, then when I have value hands, especially value hands that unblock, I want to go for max pain. Like I want to charge as much out of those draws as I can. So against like really weak opponents, especially in like live environments, I might even go pot in a spot like that because I just know they're never folding their flush draws. The better they are, the more I'm kind of capitulating down to that smaller GTO style small sizing.
Would you do that with pocket queens too, Rob?
No, because at that point, I'm blocking a lot of their top pairs. I would still probably go bigger than GTO, like in a live environment against a bunch of whales. I'd probably maybe go like third or half pot with top set. But I would definitely use a smaller sizing.
Okay. Yeah, I think that it really depends. That's, I think, helps us answer what we would do with a hand like ace four suited, right? I think like our nut flush draws have to sort of, I think, have to behave in a similar sort of way in my mind, at least, to like to help us understand how much of that value can we actually have, and are we always betting it, or do we want to preserve some for like an aggressive hijack that's going to bet when checked to a lot? Like maybe we want to preserve some of that value to find some of those check raises with. And I think a lot of those things are things we have to just sort of decide on the fly. But
Chris, did we have any sense? Did our hero here, Fripper, have any notes on the other players? I didn't see any in my read of the
um,
hand.
he did say this is just after the redraw. This is the eighth hand played. So that, and the villain hadn't shown any hands, but had opened and gotten folds around on one hand, standard 2.5x open. So not much. I don't think there's anything really actionable. Like there's not like a, oh, we've been playing with this person all day and we know
Mhm.
XYZ. I don't think, eight hands you can't really go on much.
Right.
So I would say we have to be playing sort of just on our table read and just on the situational read at this point.
Because that
So
would be the only thing.
wouldn't we want to like check have a heavy check here because we're sitting with an unknown there. So I like Rob's idea of exploitatively betting large against opponents that we know will react a certain way, but I think against sort of an unknown, I think in the solver world, they probably want us to do a heavy check here,
Yep,
like
I
checking most
agree.
of the
Like there's
time.
the theory land. I think this is going to be a heavy check. Um, but like yesterday, yesterday I was playing in um the whatever they called it, the follow up to the main event, and there was a player to my left, like two to my left, who I just knew every time. Like they both had the look, and I'd seen it so many times that if everybody checks to them, they're going to bet. It's just like it doesn't matter what they have, it doesn't matter what they do. That's just like they see that and they bet. And that's just like, and if you know that player is to your left here and you've got a lot of different kind of holdings, I think you're even more, I would might check range to that player um in that situation. Just to like, because then I can take that information, I can do with it whatever I want, right? But I can find a lot of raises in that spot. So um anyway, Rob asked a pertinent question earlier because in actuality, our hero bets 6K, three big blinds, and gets raised to 25K, so about 12 and a half big blinds. The big blind folds. So now we are out of position. We've just been raised, and our hero elects to call. Now, Kim and Taylor, you already talked about what would be your plan here. So it sounds like Kim, you would prefer potentially once we see this raise come through to raise back versus call. And Taylor,
I would
oh,
like mix. I would
you
probably
mix.
mix, but
Yeah.
yeah, I would raise sometimes and call sometimes.
Yeah.
Ship it. Ship it.
Ship it. Okay.
Does,
Yeah.
does, is anybody questioning the size of the raise? I mean, this looks like in a cash game, I would expect a over 4x type re-raise, right? Or a raise. Um, seems like it's a really big raise.
Mhm.
I
That's
mean,
not even the
normally I
pot
would,
size of the pot. It's not even
pardon me?
anywhere close to the size of the pot. So
Yeah, but I'm usually typically looking at raise sizes versus the bet that they're raising. The bet that he was raising was 6K. So 18K would be 3x raise. And that's what I typically see from solver outputs and things like that in tournament poker. Not necessarily in cash game poker, but in tournament poker, it seems like the raise sizes are smaller. So what is he doing by going 4.5 instead of 2.5 or 3? I just That's just a question I had. I don't have the answer. I'm hoping you geniuses can help me out.
It makes me think it's less likely to be a medium strength hand that's like a polarizing size. So it's like a similar draw or like pocket fives or pocket sixes that wants you to really make a mistake by continuing with your draw, right? So that they can feel good about it later. That they laid you the wrong price for you to pay when you got to draw them. But I don't think they're doing this with like ace six. I don't think they're doing this with like pocket eights. I don't think they're doing this with like, I don't know, those kinds of medium strength hands. I can see them doing this with the sets. And if they're a player that plays draws with a raise, then you could see this with some straight draws, some flush draws. I see that.
Yeah, and the good news here is that we, unless I'm not thinking of one, I don't think there's a draw that we could possibly be behind. I mean, I guess they,
Right.
because I don't think they have any pair. If they have like, I mean, what five do they have that has two spades? It's
Yeah,
hard.
it's
It's hard
not
to.
ace five. So yeah.
I mean, 5-4 spades, maybe. Are they calling from the high? I don't know if they're calling from the hijack with that. So it's hard to imagine them being any of their draws being ahead of us right now. So that's really nice, and that might lean me toward a call because I'm behind their value and I'm ahead of their draws and I've got a lot of equity. Um, but I can see the case for shipping it. In fact,
Would we be
yeah.
more inclined to ship it if we had like 9-10 of spades here, and we're just our ace is never like we don't have an ace to be ahead with Rob Gardner.
I actually like it the other way. I think having an over to the queen, if we're going to get it in, is really important. So we have additional drawing outs against top pair type hands. I also think that this is where kind of the bigger conversation from the flop comes in, because one of the problems with getting in this spot is we know we're never folding, but we bleed equity, right? And so we end up in a situation where we bloat the pot, and then when we call here on the flop and the turn bricks, now we still have our nut flush, and now we have a much bigger pot, and now we're kind of in that no man's land where they can put us in a sizing that's marginally profitable or even potentially not profitable and causes us to leak, not realize equity. So the sizing on flop is so critically important. And that kind of, talks to Kim's point about potentially just getting it in here so that we don't end up in a situation where it's like, oh, well, I have to call, and then you break the turn, and then now what, right? You have like a 1.2, 1.5 SPR, and you're just in this really horrible spot.
Kim, I think you were next.
Yeah, I just we did pick up equity on the turn though. We turned open-ended, I believe. We have ace four and the turn was a 7. So we did pick up some equity. I think like big to the point here of how to play this turn is also dependent on sort of where we are in this tournament and how our remaining chip stack, if we fold, is able to go on. Like, are we still one of the middle stacks in the tournament? Are we, do we still have lots of play? Certainly earlier in a tournament, I would not hesitate to get it in. But maybe we're going to make some folds here because we're probably supposed to call sometimes and fold sometimes. But I think because of where we are in the tournament, that we might consider leaning more towards folding because of the fact that we're getting close to the bubble. Maybe we still have lots of chips, lots of big blinds that we can find better use for. So
is that another argument for checking instead of betting then, to kind of, if we're at the point in the tournament where we're starting to think about ICM and we're starting to sort of demote some of our actions, big bets become small bets become checks.
You mean checking on the flop?
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point as well, because we're also out of position. So we sort of want to go into realization mode and not capitalization mode, for the most part, because of where we are in the tournament, I think. But if we can say sort of keep the pot small, then we can realize right to the river.
Taylor, you unmuted earlier there. Would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I totally agree with the thoughts of ICM, where we are in the tournament. What does our stack mean in this specific spot? That kind of weighs heavy in my mind because we're getting relatively close to the money. Um, you can make the case, hey, if you jam and hit your flush, like you're going to win a huge pot and then kind of put yourself into a big spot here. But the other thing that I think that I somewhat disagree with Rob on is like we don't necessarily have to like keep ourselves immune to what is our opponent going to do to us on the turn here. I think a lot of opponents, especially in a seniors event of the 360 price point, are not going to be well balanced enough and also thinking enough to like put us into those blender spots. So I'm going to feel relatively comfortable when I check the turn and villain bets huge, that they have a very strong hand and they are not well balanced with bluffs with, other hands that might be beating us. Like the way this hand goes of a turn check by us and the villain going all in, like I think there's like a 98% chance that we are currently behind and a 2% chance that we might be ahead. And then you run the numbers based off that, and I feel really confident in just folding here, even though you are kind of running the numbers and like, hey, a third of the time, you're just going to win a massive pot and might go on to win the tournament and or increase your chance to do that, so on and so forth. It's just I'm going to not give my opponent way too much credit to be pulling off big bluffs, to be pulling off big maneuvers in a tournament of this price point and the seniors event. It's just I just don't think it's happening.
Yeah, if my math is correct here, this is like a 48 big blind shove here. This is a massive overbet. If I'm reading this description right. So like this is okay, so we get the check raise, we call seven of hearts on the turn. So the board is queen of spades, six of spades, five of diamonds, seven of hearts. We again have ace four of spades. We check to the villain, and the villain just piles their whole stack in. I can't. I mean, maybe there's some opponents that can. I think it really hurts that we have spades now, right? Like the only other things that are doing this potentially are really good spade combos. We have the ace of spades. So the only thing that we're ahead of is something like, and they can't have king, queen of spades. So they have like something like king, jack of spades, king, ten of spades, something like that. That's what we have to be hoping for when we call this 50 big blind shove. Otherwise, they've got a queen, they've got a set, they've got a straight, they've got something that's just dominating us, and we're just hoping to hit, a spade on the river. I think it's a pretty easy fold at that point, even though we have so much equity. It's just so big, and it's so unlikely that we're ever really ahead.
And do you guys like? I think some players, even if they are bluffing in this spot, they're not doing it at a high enough frequency that it makes it profitable to call, right? Like I think you're just you don't have to be right all the time here for the fold to be profitable. Um, is there, and I guess I don't know, you guys will tell me, there are those villains out there where it's like when they use the overbet, like it's a go away sizing. And make that note on those players when you're playing against them. But in a vacuum, do you guys struggle with this at all? Sometimes it's just like, well, they put me in the blender and I'm gonna fold not knowing, and that's kind of like part of poker. Eric Jin talks about how recreational players call too much because they want to close the loop. They want to see,
Yeah.
they want to know if they were ahead or behind, and like that certainty matters. But is
And
that
there's always that famous kind of like the why so big kind of like that is actually a little, Andrew Brocas calls that your calling demon, like
Yes.
that I have to sort of like shoo off my shoulder when somebody bets like this. Um, I'm often like, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, if you actually had something so great here, why would you want me to fold? But I don't think that's the mentality of a lot. The people are not often trying to extract value, right? They're just trying to like, I do not want to lose. So I am going to do everything in my power right now to not lose. And I don't care that I am costing myself future value. I am going to not lose. And if you call me, that's great because I still have a lot of value. I'm probably winning. Um, and if you suck out of me, that's my life lot, and I hate you, and that that kind of thing. But um, I think you have to, when people shove big, you have to sort of differentiate. Are they the kind that's capable of doing this as a bluff, or is it just I have had been sucked out on so many times it's not happening again? That's very
I
different mentalities.
100% agree and see people do this all the time at these tournaments when they have just the queen.
Right.
Like they just don't want you hitting your draw, right? So it's just a simple math problem then.
Right.
Like if you think they could have just the queen, then you count your aces and you count your outs and you just do a simple mathematical calculation and decide whether you're calling or not.
Yeah, I totally agree too. I've been playing a lot of live recently, and I see this move a bunch, just way big bets. And even like in this example, it doesn't even really feel like a queen because we were the pre-flop aggressor. We continuation bet on the flop, and then they raised us and then jammed turn. Like they would likely be worried about us having ace queen or even like kings or aces, and it doesn't seem like they're scared of that, but they are potentially scared of the flush draw and like want you to get out of there. And maybe as the flush draw you feel like you should be counteracting that and being like, well, if you want the flush draw to go, maybe I shouldn't go. But like Kim said, it's a simple math problem at that point. You just kind of go through it and you're like, okay, well, the math says I'm probably losing a little bit of chips here. And now it's an ICM situation as we're getting close to the money. Okay, I'm going to fold and just fight another day.
Well, Fripper left us 3 questions here. Thoughts on their flop bet, sizing or bet versus checking. And I think we've talked about that a little bit here for them on the show. Thoughts on calling the 25,000 raise, and we've kind of talked about that as well. And are we ever calling this all in by the villain? Sounds like the consensus is no here. Does anyone want to answer differently to any of those 3 questions for Fripper? Doesn't sound like it. So so Fripper, thanks for posting, and I hope you're enjoying your premium membership here at RecPoker. This post actually kind of created a whole side conversation between some of us Wrecking Crew members. So we're going to close this episode here, and I'll post the link, of course, to this post in the show notes. So if you're following along and you want to see the post, it's free to join, it's free to post. Please do come along and get involved. And tune in next week where we'll be kind of taking some of the strategic concepts at play in this hand and teasing those out as well. So without any further ado, I guess I want to thank Fripper / Midwest 1811 for posting and taking that courage and putting themselves out there when they knew that they didn't have all the answers. That's how we all get better, folks, by sharing our lack of certainty with each other and helping each other get better. So thanks to Fripper. Thanks to Chris, Rob, Taylor, and Kim. We got both Robs in the room tonight. To the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And of course, to all our listeners at home and all our premium members and everyone part of RecPoker around the world. Thanks for all your contributions. We'll see you next week.